This Iranian airline continued flying around the world as Iran emerged as the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak in the Middle East. The first official Covid-19 cases in Iraq and Lebanon both arrived on Mahan Air flights from Iran. BBC News Arabic has analysed flight tracking data and spoken to Mahan Air insiders to show how this airline continued flying despite government flight bans that were later put in place, and put the lives of its passengers and cabin crew at risk, who say they weren't given the necessary personal protective equipment, contributing to the spread of coronavirus around the region. Qom, Iran, the religious heart for Shia Islam in the Middle East. Millions of pilgrims visit this holy city every year. It was here that the first deaths from Covid-19 in the region were reported. The World Health Organization was already warning about the situation.
Iran in the past 2 days has reported 18 cases and 5 deaths, I think, 4 deaths. This is very concerning.
Despite this, the authorities allowed religious festivities and a national election to go ahead. Within days, Iran had become the epicenter of the region's outbreak. Our investigation begins on the 31st of January, the day that Iran officially suspended all routine flights to and from China to help slow the spread of the virus. Analyzing flight tracking data, BBC News Arabic can reveal how Mahan Air, which is linked to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, defied its own country's flight ban with China, almost immediately after it was announced. The flight data shows that from the 31st of January until the 20th of April, Mahan Air was the only airline that continued direct flights to and from Iran and China. In Iran, public criticism and concern was growing for these flights. And in response, Mahan Air posted these images on Chinese social media site Weibo, showing that aid was being delivered on its planes. We analyzed the flight tracking data further and cross-referenced it with Mahan Air's official statements. 6 flights were used for aid, and 4 others were used to evacuate Iranian citizens in China, with the last of these flights on the 5th of February. But our investigation can reveal that 157 flights were made after that date, and Iran must have given Mahan Air permission to breach its own flight ban with China. By the middle of February, the virus was at its peak in China and spreading at an alarming rate in Iran. On the 24th of February, the Deputy Health Minister appeared feverish at a press conference. He later tested positive for coronavirus. Religious festivities continued, and no lockdown measures had been imposed. Videos started to appear on social media of Iranian hospitals being overrun. And by the end of the month, the BBC reported that at least 210 people had died across the country. But Iran's official figure was 34. On the 27th of February, this newspaper reported that Mahan Air staff were concerned that they weren't given time to self-isolate after flying back from China, and they said they were made to continue to fly. They feared this was helping to spread the coronavirus. But the airline and its crew weren't only flying to and from China, it was also flying to Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq from Iran. All countries with strong military, economic, and religious ties to the powerful Iranian Revolutionary Guard. There was widespread alarm across the region about the continuation of these flights.
شكراً إيران. شكراً لأنك سمحت لطائرة فيها مصابون بالكورونا أن تدخل أجواءنا.
خطر الإصابة بهذا الفيروس لا سامح الله بالعراق أصبح وشيكا.
في حزب فتح حسابه مطار بيروت كرمال إيران. ليش؟ ما عم بفهم. أي متى بده يكون أهم شيء بالنسبة لك الشعب اللبناني؟
It seems these fears were justified. In Lebanon, the first case of Covid-19 was reported on the 21st of February. It was this woman who'd returned from a pilgrimage to the holy city of Qom in Iran. A picture of her passport was posted on Twitter. In Iraq, the first official case was reported on the 24th of February. It was this Iranian student. His Facebook profile shows he was in Tehran at the height of the outbreak. Using a combination of flight data and speaking to sources in Lebanon and Iraq, BBC News Arabic has been able to confirm the Iranian student was on flight W55062 from Tehran to Najaf on the 19th of February. The Lebanese woman was on flight W51152 the following day from Tehran to Beirut. Both operated by Mahan Air. This footage was filmed by a passenger that was on the very same plane Lebanon's patient zero was on. The announcement of the first cases of COVID-19 added to the growing concern about flights continuing to arrive from Iran. On the 26th of February, a video emerged on Twitter of a Mahan Air flight just landing at Baghdad International Airport from Iran. In response to growing calls from the public and to help slow the spread of the virus, the Iraqi government had officially suspended all routine flights to and from Iran 5 days earlier. But according to the flight tracking data, Mahan Air was given permission to fly 15 times after the ban was put into place. In a statement to the BBC, the Iraqi government say that these were repatriation flights and had the approval of the Iraqi Civil Aviation Authority. They said that flights from Iraq to Iran will continue, but travelers from Iran are subject to restrictions when entering Iraq. Many of the Iranians returning home were pilgrims who were visiting Iraq's holy sites. Public health officials believe that these religious mass gatherings played a significant role in helping to spread the virus. A well-placed Mahan Air insider told the BBC that by this time, more than 50 of their cabin crew were showing symptoms of COVID-19. And cabin crew say they were still not issued with the necessary personal protective equipment according to standards set by airline industry body IATA. The BBC has obtained a copy of a non-disclosure agreement given to all Mahan Air staff, threatening them with criminal prosecution if they speak publicly about their concerns. Mahan Air was operating in other countries that had travel bans with Iran. There were 8 flights to Syria. There were 37 flights to Dubai, 19 flights to Turkey, and a further 18 flights around the world. All these countries must have given Mahan Air permission to land, and they did so despite their own bans with Iran. On the 18th of April, 1,300 Mahan Air staff signed this open letter, accusing the airline of mismanaging the crisis. They say that their calls for PPE had been repeatedly ignored, and that they'd been threatened by management for speaking out. They also say that they're being blamed for spreading the virus to their loved ones and to the country. There were other airlines flying in and out of Iran at this time, but Mahan Air was the only one operating on such a large scale. Mahan Air's links to the powerful Iranian Revolutionary Guard may have given it the cover it needs to continue to do some business around the world. The airline CEO, Mr. Hamid Arabnejad, and its senior management were warned by staff of the risks they were exposing their passengers and crew to, and yet continued to fly. helping to spread the coronavirus and endanger people's lives. The BBC contacted Mahan Air and other countries which allowed the airline to land despite imposing bans for flights coming from Iran. Apart from the Iraqi government, they all declined the BBC's request for comment.